When we discuss the role of receptors in sensation, we noted that change is necessary in order for any neural activity to be provoked. Change is fundamental to all perception, and we can illustrate this quite dramatically. Um, it's difficult to stabilize a projected image onto the retina because your eyes are always moving. In order to do this, what you actually have to do is build a little projector that can be mounted on the eyeball and then project an image onto the back of the retina and hold it steady, and then seeing stops. So the presence of an image on the back of the retina is not a stimulus for seeing. If you get down on your knees and examine a dewdrop on a blade of grass, you'll also see an image in it because of optics, and you wouldn't say that a dewdrop is seeing. So it's not the presence of an image on the back of the retina that is relevant to seeing, it's the processes of change that occur on the retina. Now, I can't provide you with one of those little eyeball projectors, very expensive and very difficult work to do, but we can approximate this, and this works well in a classroom situation. You may have to try out various positions for yourself in this demonstration, but what I want you to do is position yourself about 50 centimeters away from your computer monitor and to stare at the black dot on the next slide. First of all, just look at the next slide and you'll see a black dot with a grey penumbra, a grey haze around it. When you stare at the black dot without moving your eyes, I hope you will find that the grey area goes away. And as soon as you move your eyes, it comes back. So try that now. I'll leave this here. Now you can go back and try that again at your leisure. I hope it worked. What this is intended to demonstrate is that the retina is not the keeper of static images. Eyes are constantly in movement, and we're going to review the various forms of eye movement now, which means that the pattern of light and dark on the retina is constantly changing, and this is necessary for vision. Notice that this is completely different from the mode of image acquisition in a camera. The camera needs to be kept still, and then an image is captured and then processed or viewed or something like this. The eye is structurally not dissimilar to a camera in that it has a lens, and the retina plays the role of the charge coupled device or film in a camera, but its job is not image acquisition. So we're going to look now at a few kinds of eye movement. Saccades, smooth pursuit movement, vergence, the vestibulo-ocular, reflex, and tremor. That's a lot of different kinds of eye movements, and they all are in action pretty much all the time. The first one is the most familiar. This is saccades. These are rapid jumps of the eyes from one focal position to another focal position. And you're quite aware of this as you're scanning an image or a scene, your eyes jump around. So on the screen you can see an image presented to somebody, and you can see to the right of it then a recording of the saccades as someone views this image of a face. And you can see, very typical, that the saccades are jumping around from meaningful point to meaningful point. So the T shape with the two eyes and the face, the nose and the mouth, these are where, this is how we gather information about faces. We look at specific points in the face. And it takes about 200 milliseconds for us to respond to something. So if I suggest to you that you should change your vision, about 200 milliseconds later, there'll be a rapid jump in eye position. So that's the most familiar form of eye movement, probably the one we all think of when we think of eye movement. Here's another one, and it's unique among eye movements in that it's not symmetric for the two eyes. Rather, it's possible as something approaches your nose for the two eyes to swivel inward. This applies only to objects within a fairly close range to the body. As you're looking at something very distant, your all objects are treated more or less equally, but beyond some area of proximity, then the eyeballs will rotate inwards in order to keep the object being tracked in focus.
Stay focused on the tip of the Q-tip. Very good. We're going to do one more time. You can see the convergence in the pupillary constriction.
So vergence or convergence are terms used for this. Here's another form of eye movement which is very unique in that it cannot be attributed to the body alone. This requires something in the world. I'll illustrate it with this gentleman who is observing and keeping track of the finger that's moving. As you observe something moving in a continuous stream in the world, you can follow it directly with your eyes. If the thing is not there, you can try to move your eyes in that fashion and it just won't work. They will hop around. They will move as saccades from one position to the other. So this cannot be done without the presence of something in the world on which your gaze can rest. That's quite remarkable. I want to consider that one together with this next one. This is a very different mechanism. It's the means by which we keep our gaze fixed on something as our head moves. So this poor woman is going to have her head yanked around now. She's watching something intently with her eyes, and she can keep her eyes on that even as the head is moved around by an experimenter. Now I think you can see why this would be useful. Obviously, if you're looking at something, you want to be able to move your head. The mechanism is very like that of a Steadicam, which is used for keeping the image stable as you're filming something. And it would appear to be something rather different from the smooth pursuit tracking. Before we go and look at the similarities, however, there's a nice illustration of this vestibulo-ocular reflex in an owl now. Birds have different muscles associated with their eyes, and where our vestibulo-ocular reflex is all done using the muscles that cradle the eyeball, in a bird that work is distributed over the head and neck muscles. So here's an owl who's been likewise yanked around and keeping its gaze fixed on something, and you can see the remarkable stability of its head as well as its patience with the experimenter. I'm going to let that bird run for a little bit because I think he's the best possible illustration of the vestibulo-ocular reflex. I must say I'm very fond of that bird. Now, smooth pursuit tracking, that thing that allows you to follow something in the world, is not the same mechanism as vestibulo-ocular reflex, and yet they both seem to achieve one common goal. We can understand them as two separate mechanisms, but we can also understand them as both serving to keep the relationship between the viewer and the viewed constant, irrespective of whether the change arises in the thing in the world or in the body itself. So there are different ways to understand these. A computational account that is concerned with internal mechanisms would view these as two completely separate things. Embodied accounts of cognition will focus instead on the relationship between the observer and the observed, and they'll notice that these two distinct processes serve to maintain the same relation. So different ways of understanding vision give rise to different interpretations of straightforward physiological mechanisms. There's one more form of eye movement which is always at work and is not well understood. Eyeballs tremble. About 80 times a second they're vibrating. It's a low amplitude physiological tremor. If it's not there, there's something pathological going on. And we don't have theories of visual perception that build this in yet. And yet it's obviously a part of a normal functioning eye-based visual system. So all these various kinds of movement, which are central to vision, to the active exploration of the environment, serve to illustrate that the eye should not be thought of as a camera. There are structural analogies. Yes, we have a lens and there is an image projected on the back of the retina, but the image itself is not the basis of seeing, and the eye is crucially part of the visual system. A camera is not part of a visual system. This visual system, which is a whole body affair and expresses also the relation between the viewer and the world, is an activity in which we constantly sample from our surroundings, looking for meaning, looking for things that make sense to us. So seeing is not just a matter of what's there, it's a matter of what we're attending to, what we expect, and what we're looking for. There is an image on the back of the retina if you hold everything still, but everything is never still, and change is required for vision. And so you cannot separate the mechanisms from the whole observer with their purposes. They're one thing. And this distinguishes the eye as part of the visual system from the camera which you hold in your hand.